Okay, it looks good.
Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Paribrajacharya Ashtotar Satashri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Krishna, Gopa Gopinath Shama Kunda, Radha Kunda, Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Navadvip Dham Ki Jai, Ganga Mayi Ki Jai, Jamuna Mayi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Samaveta Bhaktavrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna, and welcome to Srimad Bhagavatam with His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami. It is Friday, November 1st, 2024 in New York, and tonight we are picking up with Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th Canto, Chapter 7, text number 32. All the luminaries at the reconstituted sacrifice of Daksha are offering their prayers, and today we're starting with the prayers of King Indra. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Make sure we have this documented in the chat box properly. Indra Uvacha Idam apyachyuta vishvabhavanam vapur anandakaram manodrisham suravidvikshapanayarudayudhayar bhuja dandayar upapanam ashtabhihi. King Indra said, "My dear Lord, your transcendental form with 8 hands and weapons in each of them appears for the welfare of the entire universe, and it is very pleasing to the mind and eyes. In such a form, your lordship is always prepared to punish the demons who are envious of your devotees." Report: it is generally understood from revealed scriptures that Lord Vishnu appears with 4 hands, but in this particular sacrificial arena, Lord Vishnu arrived with 8 hands. King Indra said, "Even though we are accustomed to see your 4-handed Vishnu form, this appearance with 8 hands is as real as the 4-handed form." As Lord Brahma had said, to realize the transcendental form of the Lord is beyond the power of the senses. In reply to that statement by Brahma, King Indra said that even though the transcendental form of the Lord is not perceivable by the material senses, his activities and transcendental form can be understood. The Lord's uncommon features, uncommon activities, and uncommon beauty can be perceived even by an ordinary man. For example, when Lord Krishna appeared just like a 6 or 7-year-old boy in Vrindavan, he was approached by the residents there. There were torrents of rain, and the Lord saved the residents of Vrindavan by lifting Govardhan Hill and resting it on the little finger of his left hand for 7 days. This uncommon feature of the Lord should convince even materialistic persons who want to speculate to the limit of their material senses. The activities of the Lord are pleasing to experimental vision also, but impersonalists will not believe in his identity because they study the personality of the Lord by comparing their personality to his. Because men in this material world cannot lift a hill, they do not believe that the Lord can lift one. They accept the statements of Srimad Bhagavatam to be allegorical, and they try to interpret them in their own way. But factually, the Lord lifted the hill in the presence of all the inhabitants of Vrindavan, as corroborated by great acharyas and authors like Vyasadeva and Narada. Everything about the Lord, his activities, pastimes, and uncommon features, should be accepted as is. And in this way, even in our present condition, we can understand the Lord. In the instance herein, King Indra confirmed, your presence with 8 hands is as good as your presence with 4 hands. There is no doubt about it. Om Jnana-timirandhasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurun militam yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanang Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So each one of the personalities who are offering prayers to the Lord in this sacrifice are offering prayers based on their own realization. And King Indra here, I found it appropriate that he himself is appreciating the Lord's power to punish the demons, which is King Indra's job in the material world. He's given that vibhuti by the Lord to do that exact thing. And so it would follow to reason that he's attracted to that feature of the Lord through which he carries out his own work. And he's carrying out his own work. Why? Because he's deputed to that post because he's qualified to do it by desire, by activity. That's how someone gets to be Indra. And he's relating with the Lord on the basis of that, of his service and his, now he's seeing the Lord personally. So he's reflecting the Lord's power to curb the demons. And his relationship it has that flavor to it. And here he's mentioning the fact that Lord Vishnu appears here with 8 hands, which is not a problem because 4 hands, 8 hands, it doesn't matter. It's attractive. I remember seeing the painting of this particular appearance of the Lord. I believe it was Jadharani Mata did it on the wall of the Brooklyn Temple. Lord Vishnu appearing with 8 hands in this particular arena, if I'm not mistaken. What else here? Oh, and Prabhupada likes to point out in the purport that he takes the appearance of the Lord so matter of factly. In fact, he winds up his comments by saying, "There is no doubt about it." So as Prabhupada is describing the uncommon features of the Lord and how they can be understood by even the ordinary man, he says that they can be understood just by hearing about them. He describes the pastime of the Lord lifting Govardhan Hill, and he says here, everything about the Lord should be accepted as is. And in this way, even in our present condition, we can understand the Lord. So it's just as Krishna says, just hear from me. Just asangshayam samagram mam. If you hear from me with the right attitude, you can know. It's a funny thing about knowledge that if someone wants to know, if someone is ready to know, qualified to know, then they can know if someone tells them the truth. But as we hear here and other places, someone can be told, this is what it is. There is no doubt about it. And there's going to be a doubt about it because A, they're not ready, they don't have the desire, they're envious, whatever. They're dyed-in-the-wool impersonalists. And so they can't, even though the knowledge is there, the information is there. The knowledge just doesn't take somehow or other. That the process of knowledge, it won't happen. So Hare Krishna. They're very unfortunate. Maharaj, we'd love to hear if you have something to say on this.
Namo Vishnupadaya. Sorry.
It looks like you have two channels on. Oh, okay.
So we have two devices for practical reasons. Okay, now we're something like number 9. Okay, now we should be all right.
Sounds good here.
Okay, good. The Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Shaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashpachade Shataya. Here the infallible personality of Godhead, Achyuta, appears for the welfare of the whole universe, Vishvapalanam. Vapura Ananda Karam Manodrasham. He appears in his form, which bestows Ananda, transcendental happiness, to the mind and to the eye, Manodrasham. I'm not sure how this compound works, whether, but anyway, let's leave it at that. The Sura Vidvid Kshapanayar Udayutayar. Okay, so coming to the last point that Kendra Prabhu spoke about. This is Prabhupada's approach to epistemology, or how we get knowledge. Generally, the speculative approach is to say this stands for this stands for that, this suggests this is a symbol for that, and to take everything as open for interpretation and reinterpretation. And everything represents some higher truth and isn't to be taken literally. It's all allegorical, fictional, symbolic. And Prabhupada's approach is, it says what it says and it means what it says. It should just be taken as it is. It's literally true, and that's the way to read the text. Radically different, especially when you come, well, anywhere, the Puranas, the Bhagavad Gita, everybody wants to read it allegorically and therefore as grist for the mill, and as subject matter for interpretation and speculation. And Prabhupada's approach is, no, it means what it says. And if we want to otherwise we explain everything away, finally. Here when it says, Vapu Ananda Karam Manodrasham, the transcendental form of the Lord, which gives spiritual happiness, well, that form represents this, and that form represents that. And then we finally wind up explaining away the personality of Godhead, who's the ultimate objective of the text. And then we're nowhere. We're just limited to our own minds, which are exactly that, limited. Tapite deva padambuja. There. So one can take that approach if one wishes, but then one won't have access to the personality of God. If one wants to approach the personality of Godhead, then Sevamukehi Jivados, one has to take the devotional process by which the Lord becomes pleased and reveals himself. Otherwise he's adhokshaja, he's beyond the realm of our knowing. By that means avanga manasa gochara, he's beyond the scope of the mind and the senses. So he's therefore pantastu koti satavatsara sampurna, the same thing. The mind and senses are limited, and therefore if we want to approach that which is beyond the mind and senses, we need a different process. The speculative process and the empiric process simply won't work. They simply won't work. You need some other means. So this is the means. Just accept Bhagavatam as it is, Bhagavad Gita as it is, and satisfy the Lord by service. And eventually, as Prabhupada said, you'll be able to see Krishna face to face. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj. There's a question from Saraswati Mata here. Pranams Param Puji Maharaj and all the Vaishnavas. It seems everyone was relieved to see Lord Vishnu after the uncontrollable chaos. Some messes or situations can only be cleared up by the Lord. Also, what is meant by, quote, activities of the Lord are pleasing to experimental vision?
Experimental means experienced. In Spanish, experimentar means to experience. Doesn't mean to experiment as in a scientific laboratory. Without looking at my dictionary, I would suspect that if you go to experiment, you'll come to some root which indicates that, well, all right, now you've got me. Experiment comes from experiri, all right? But what does that tell me? Yeah, it comes from a word that means proof, from Latin experimentum, see experience. Well, without going on to the rest of the chase, that's what Prabhupada means. Experimental knowledge doesn't mean try this, try that, although it can mean that, because when you're talking about experience, that's what you have to do. Well, let's try this, try that. And you're advertising, experience this, experience that, because this experience didn't get you there, that experience didn't get you there. So experiment has to do with experimental vision, experienced vision. Yeah, experiential, right. Thank you, Tulsi Priya. Hare Krishna.
I would like to add one small thing.
Sure.
Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Krishnaya Bhutale Guru Dasa Jayadvaita Swami Namo. I just want to say the timing of the purport talking about Govardhan is so wonderful. Today is Govardhan Puja, and there's the lifting of Govardhan Hill in our very first purport. And also, very interesting, that Srila Prabhupada, I don't know if it reflects Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur, but that Srila Prabhupada puts the lifting of Govardhan Hill in the context of Indra's prayers. It's very, and he leaves Indra out of it. You know, he just talks about how glorious it is that Krishna lifts the hill. He doesn't mention Indra in the purport, which is, you know, saves him face in the context of these prayers.
Yeah, all wonderful points. This is from, in terms of King Indra, this is definitely experiential knowledge. He had the direct experience. So we're not against experiential knowledge, but the experiential knowledge comes when it's bestowed. In that sense, it's not experimental. Well, I'll try to see this way. Someone stands before the deity and is kind of trying to somehow or other see transcendence by adjustment of vision, or by this way or that way. But when Krishna reveals himself, then you get experimental, experienced, experiential, avirbhuta, sense which you get experienced knowledge. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Great points.
Yes, and I was looking at the commentary of Srila Vishwanath, who all along throughout this whole section, he's been pointing out that one person says one thing, and it's directed at someone else in the assembly. These are all prayers to Lord Vishnu, but it's like a conversation. One person hears what the other person says, and then they offer their prayers. Like he says, I'll just, if it's short, it's short. I can read the purport if it's all right, Maharaj.
Sure.
So here's the commentary. Uh, Indra is speaking. By your mercy, your body makes this universe, idam, auspicious. This 8-armed form for destroying the demons is seen by us, even with our material senses, by your indescribable mercy, and gives us bliss. This is proof that there is no other way in which we can be blissful. This statement is directed to Brahma. And I suppose if we went back and looked at what Brahma said, there was something that Indra picked up on and felt like needed to be said. And so he says it here. It's just interesting, the dynamic of everyone present in that assembly. And everyone has a relationship with everyone else. And there's conflicts being resolved in the presence of the Lord. It's very pleasing. I can hear Radhesha Prabhu very clearly with your microphone, Maharaj. So if he'd like to read our next verse, that would be just fabulous.
Sure. Patnya uchuhu yangyo yam tava yajanaya kena srishto vidvastas pashupatina didaksha kukopat tam nastam shavashayana vashantamidham yangyatman nalina ruchadrish drishapuni. The wives of the performers of the sacrifice said, "My dear Lord, this sacrifice was arranged under the instruction of Brahma. But unfortunately, Lord Shiva, being angry at Daksha, devastated the entire scene. And because of his anger, the animals meant for sacrifice are lying dead. Therefore, the preparations of the yajna have been lost. Now, by the glance of your lotus eyes, the sanctity of this sacrificial arena may be again invoked." Animals were offered in sacrifice in order to give them renewed life. That was the purpose of having animals there. Offering an animal in sacrifice and giving him renewed life was the evidence of the strength of chanting mantras. Unfortunately, when Daksha's sacrifice was devastated by Lord Shiva, some of the animals were killed. One was killed just to replace the head of Daksha. Their bodies were lying about, and the sacrificial arena was turned into a crematorium. Thus, the real purpose of yajna was lost. Lord Vishnu, being the ultimate objective of such sacrificial ceremonies, was requested by the wives of the priests to glance over the yajna arena with his causeless mercy, so that the routine work of the yajna might be continued. The purport here is that animals should not be unnecessarily killed. They were used to prove the strength of the mantras and were to have been rejuvenated by the use of the mantras. They should not have been killed, as they were by Lord Shiva, to replace the head of Daksha with an animal's head. It was pleasing to see an animal sacrificed and rejuvenated, and that pleasing atmosphere had been lost. The wives of the priests requested that the animals be brought back to life by the glance of Lord Vishnu to make a pleasing yajna. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Krishnaya Bhutale Gurudasa Jayadvaita Swami. I only have one brief comment. I was thinking, well, I've been meditating a lot about this Puradasha, this ceremony before commencing the yajna to purify the atmosphere. And there are so many ritualistic things we do in our devotional life. There are so many practices, maybe one could call them cultural practices. Of course, we're not capable of rejuvenating animals after a sacrifice, but still we do so many things, especially now that I'm taking up seva on the altar. There's so many mantras and different things I chant. But at the end of the day, the wives of the brahmanas here, Patnya Uchu, they've nailed it. You know, they've hit the nail on the head. That actually the Puradasha ceremony, it may cleanse and purify the atmosphere for the yajna. but actually it's your glance, it's Krishna's presence, it's yajna personified that is the actual purifying factor, that is the actual success element, the daivam chaiva prapancham, the ultimate allowing principle for anything to be purified, for anything to be sanctified. And so I like that they come to this conclusion. Actually, it's your glance that purifies the whole arena, not our external endeavors to perform a Purudasha ceremony or anything else. That's all
I'm reminded that Kunti prays to the Lord that you please stay here because it's by your presence that our kingdom becomes auspicious. The also auspicious yajnas by Vaishnava Parad, the yajna becomes a crematorium. Even Sankirtan yajna, we should be careful about Vaishnava Parads. Otherwise, everything can be devastated. Yes.
Sometimes the crematorium is a little more metaphorical. Here it's very literal, but sometimes with Vaishnava Parad it's a crematorium, but a sort of more subtle manifestation of a crematorium. The sacrifice, for all intents and purposes, is dead when the Aparad's
Hare
And sometimes the place might be literally a crematorium, but where the word Vaishnava is worshipped, like a samadhi, then it becomes very auspicious place. It can be the other way around also. Like where the samadhi is, or where we go for Vaishnava's funeral ceremony, where the Vaishnava is worshipped. That place is very auspicious.
In the chat, there's a comment from Saraswati Devi. She says, throwing barbs at Shiva still continues. I'm wondering, what is the purpose of perfecting mantras to rejuvenate any animal or anyone, because the lifespan of anyone is under the will of the Lord and not meant to be tampered with, in respect to how much time a conditioned soul spends in a particular body?
Well, this is experimental in the sense we're used to. To see that the mantras were chanted properly, the animal would be rejuvenated. The question almost comes to, why do anything? Since everything is already fixed by the arrangement of the Lord, why do anything? If the lifespan of Drona and Bhishma and everyone have already been determined, then why should Arjuna fight? He can just, why not go off to the forest and wait for everyone to self-destruct by the laws of their own karma? So one has some duty to perform. We're not just messing around, killing animals and trying it out, seeing how it works. But these are prescribed duties for the priests. And whatever we do, it's meant to be done as prescribed duty and for the satisfaction of the personality of Godhead. Otherwise, from one point of view, whatever we do doesn't make any difference. It's going to happen anyway. What is that? At the end of the Bhagavad Gita. No, not at the end. Mayahatam, Krishna says in the 11th chapter, that I've already killed all these men. They've already been killed by me. So nimitta macha bhavasali sacham. Now you just act instrumentally.
Maya eva ete nihita purvam eva. Maya eva ete nihita purvam eva nimitta.
Mayahitam.
मया एव एते निहता पूर्वमेव निमित्तमात्र भव
Maya kapam svam jahima vitishka vividhasvajitasi shresatam.
Yeah. I've already killed all these men. So from that point of view, yes. So it's an opportunity for us to perform devotional service. So life in this world is an opportunity. Looking at Ecclesiastes, why do anything? Everything is already fixed. It's already, whatever's happened before will happen again. Whatever's happening now will happen in the future. Nothing makes any difference. Our lives are inconsequential, and so on. So, and it's all true. But then why should I do anything? Then the reason is given, because this is what human life is meant for, to render devotional service. It's Krishna's plan. Krishna already has his plan. He said that, Prabhupada said that also. He doesn't need us. As preachers, we're not required. Krishna can do everything. He said that about Bhaktivinoda Thakur. I'm leaving this world, my mission unfinished. What did he mean, his mission unfinished? He could have done everything. He's a Vaishnava. But he left something for you to do. So we have something to do for the satisfaction of Krishna. And Prabhupada said, if you don't, what is that? Pritiviti yatache nagaradi graham sarvatra prachara vaivemon. My name will be heard everywhere. So that's the opportunity for us to do it. And Prabhupada said, if you don't do it, somebody else will do it. But you can do it and take the credit. Of course, we're not meant for just taking credit, but it's an opportunity to serve Krishna. Otherwise, why do anything? It is all meaningless. But as a matter of duty, one should act. Not for sense gratification, but for the satisfaction of Krishna.
Saraswati Mata had a clarification. She says, sorry, I meant is the mantra for the use of keeping one young for longer or raising one from the dead?
Raising one from the dead. The animals were killed, so there's no question of keeping them alive longer. They've been deliberately killed. So then the mantra is invoked to literally bring them back to life. That's the answer.
We always hear about it being successful, but I'd hate to be at a yajna where it's a dud.
Yeah.
It's like, oh man.
Yeah, mantra was off, the animal's dead. It would be considered inauspicious.
Yeah, it goes from very sattvic to very tamasic very quickly.
I found, based on what Radhesha Prabhu was saying, I was finding it interesting just examining the tone from and the mindset that produces each individual set of prayers. Lord Brahma is more impressed by the feature of the Lord in his majestic and incomprehensible feature. Lord Indra is impressed and attracted to the weapons and his potency for curbing the demons, and the wives are upset because Shiva came and destroyed the sacrifice, and now there's all these dead animals. Can you please do something about this?
We heard at the beginning that Sati wanted to attend the sacrifice. All my sisters will be there, my mother will be there. It's an opportunity to dress nicely and attend the sacrifice. I want to go. So it's going to be a nice occasion, it's going to be a good festival. And then it turns ghastly. Yes, so that's different attendees have different mindsets.
And Tulsi Priya she says, it reminds me, speaking of animal sacrifice, it reminds me a bit of alchemy. The alchemist strives to create gold from base metal and become rich, but in the process gradually comes to understand and transform himself, a weird kind of mundane sadhana. Similarly, the priests doing the yajna go through a process of purification in the attempt to achieve the desired result. The real benefit is purification of oneself and spiritual advancement. Is this a proper understanding?
Well, it looks like an interesting application of alchemy to the context of Vedic yajnas. So it's, I guess it comes under the category of a realization, and it's an interesting one. And certainly true that the participants purify themselves. At the same time, there's a deliberate, there's something they want to accomplish here, that it's not just that I chant the mantras and I become purified, but we're trying to satisfy Vishnu by performing a particular program. So both things are there.
All right. So, Priti Purna Madhavi Devi, can you read text number 34?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, Ramaji. ऋषया ऊचुः अनन्वितं ते भगवन् विचेष्टितं यद् आत्मना चरसि हि कर्मणाच्यसे विभूतये यत् उपसेदुर् ईश्वरीं न मन्यते स्वयम् अनुवर्तते भवान्. The sages prayed, Dear Lord, your activities are most wonderful, and although you do everything by your different potencies, you are not at all attached to such activities. You are not even attached to the goddess of fortune, who is worshipped by the great demigods like Brahma, who pray to achieve her mercy. Purport: in Bhagavad Gita, it is said that the Lord has no desire to achieve any result from his wonderful activities, nor has he any need to perform them. But still, in order to give an example to people in general, he sometimes acts, and those activities are very wonderful. He is not attached to anything. Now, mam karmani limpanti. Although he acts very wonderfully, he is not at all attached to anything. Bhagavad Gita, 4th chapter, 14th verse. He is self-sufficient. The example is given here that goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, is always engaged in the service of the Lord, but still he is not attached to her. Even great demigods like Brahma worship the goddess of fortune in order to win her favor. But although the Lord is worshipped by many thousands, hundreds and thousands of goddesses of fortune, he is not at all attached to any one of them. This distinction concerning the exalted transcendental position of the Lord is specifically mentioned by the great sages. He is not like the ordinary living entity who is attached to the results of pious activities. It is one of the opulence of the Lord, renunciation. It is also mentioned for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that he took sannyas at the age of 24 years, leaving his beautiful wife. And so, although Lord has best of all the opulences, but still he's not attached to any of it. He's not attached to any work that he performs for setting the example for living entities. He's self-sufficient, as here Srila Prabhupada mentions in the purport. Would like to hear more from Maharaj. And also in the end, it's saying it's specifically mentioned about this transcendental position of the Lord by the great sages that he's not like ordinary living entity who is attached to the results of pious activities. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
So this is Krishna. He's first of all, he does everything by his own potencies. It's wonderful and Anvitam that Bhagavan performs activities atmana, by himself, through his own potencies. He doesn't need anyone's help. We need help to get our work done. Man wants to have a son, he needs help. He marries. But as Prabhupada points out, Brahma's born from the Lord without help from Lakshmi. And for any activities, he can do everything by himself. And he's not attached to Ishri, Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune. Anuvarta team, although she's an obedient servant. Men are attached to women who are obedient servants. This is, I would suggest, a problem, or this contributes to the problem of divorce in Kali Yuga, that the women don't want to be obedient servants. That's so demeaning, so degrading, so awful. We have to be recognized in our own right, and we should be equal actors in all affairs, and we should have our say, and so on. And men, whether they can articulate it or not, hate it. They hate it. They're looking for someone who will assist, who will be submissive, which is our term, but who will be at least, shall we say, agreeable. That if the man wants to do something, the wife will at least be agreeable. Submissive is, no man in contemporary Western society would say, I want a wife who's submissive, but at least agreeable, who's not going to fight with you over everything, who's not going to say, well, okay, that's your idea, but my idea is. But this is the modern culture. That why should I agree? You should agree to what I want. And so it becomes always a fight, and finally the couple realizes that they're incompatible. But here Lakshmi, the ideal wife, is Anuvartati. Anuvartati, she's a follower, an obedient servant of the Lord. And by that attitude, one becomes indebted. When the wife is a witch, when she wants her own way, when she's somebody you've got to put up with because you want the sense gratification, then the feeling, that feeling doesn't develop of indebtedness. But when the attitude is an attitude of service, then this feeling of indebtedness arises. She's done so much to serve me. One of my godbrothers, talking about renunciation, he said the difficulty is not the sense gratification, it's the service. By which he meant not just the convenience that I get from the service, but the fact of the service, that this person has sacrificed to serve me. So now how do I renounce a person who's done that? So Lakshmi has that qualification that she's, and therefore also men are warned about accepting service from women. When brahmacharis start accepting service from women, then their brahmacharya becomes jeopardized, because service calls for reciprocation. But here the reciprocation between Vishnu and Lakshmi is always perfect. But still, he's not attached. Anyone else would be so attached to such an agreeable, submissive wife. And Or the personality of Godhead, no, he's not attached. He accepts the service, but he can do without the service also. Hare Krishna.
Based on what you were just saying, Maharaj, it may raise the question that, it's said very clearly that he's not attached to Lakshmi Devi, but we also hear that he's very attached to Srimati Radharani.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. On the other hand, he can walk out on her also. So he sometimes exhibits his renunciation. He leaves the rasa dance, or he says to Radharani, "Get on my shoulder," and then he takes off. So he can do everything, anything and everything. So that's one side of it. But yes, I was thinking that even with ordinary devotees, he reciprocates the service. He appreciates the service of the devotees. So both qualities are there in the Lord. He's completely detached, or we can say he's materially detached. It's not that he's attached to the goddess of fortune because she's got white teeth lined up like jasmine flowers, or her other splendid qualities. But finally, Bhaktyamam Abhijan, it's the service that the Lord appreciates, which is different from the service offered in the material world. Or in the material world, it's dangerous, even if the wife is assisting me in devotional activities. Still a subtle attachment, subtle or not so subtle attachment develops, because finally the relationship is temporary. That's not why it develops, but it develops, but because the relationship is temporary, we're advised that at some point we should detach ourselves, even though it's spiritual, because it's mixed with the bodily identification. But for the personality of Godhead, these dilemmas don't arise that, well, she's serving me, but the relationship is temporary, or she's serving me and I don't really like her, but I'm getting sense gratification, so whatever. It's not anything of this mundane world. It's transcendentally situated. On one side, the Lord doesn't need anyone, even Lakshmi. And on the other side, the Lord is complete when he appears with his energy. Without, Prabhupada says, without energy, there's no meaning to Supreme Lord. So it appears that we can look at this from both ways. And that's Hari Parshad was talking about that the other day, that you get statements from Shastra that are totally contradictory, but they're meant to represent different angles of vision, or to help us see things in different aspects. So from one point of view, it's absolutely true. The Lord is completely detached from the goddess of fortune, no interest in her. Namanyate, doesn't give her any mind, as we say, just doesn't care about it. And on the other side, his entire existence is manifest in relationship to his energies, of whom the internal energy, or the internal pleasure energy, represented by Lakshmi Devi or Srimati Radharani, is paramount.
So he's attached and not attached.
Always.
Just a couple more comments, then we can pause for kirtan. Saraswati Mata says, the love that pure devotees have is not dependent on Krishna's attachment to them as exhibited by Radharani. I'm sorry, it's a question actually.
not dependent, the love the pure devotees have is not dependent on Krishna's attachment to them. Well, it is what it is. It's inherent. Well, that's there. I wouldn't say dependent on their attachment to them, but it's not dependent on whether it's reciprocated or not. Yeah, you may reciprocate or not reciprocate, but my business is to love you. My inescapable, eternal nature is to have love for you. So it's not dependent on whether you reciprocate. In the material world, love of God is, if it's not reciprocated, it's abandoned. And Prabhupada gave that example, that we go to the church, we pray, my father should come home, my brother, my husband. When they don't come home, we become atheists. So in that sense, it's entirely contingent. But the love of the pure devotees is not contingent. If you do this for me, if you do that for me, if you reciprocate, if you appear before me, if you make me blissful, if you enlighten me, if you do this, if you do that, no. Whatever. The top.
And Priti Purnamadeva Madhavi Devi says, for materialistic persons, obligations become binding in a forceful manner if no loving attachment is there. Can we say Lord Krishna, although unattached, also feels obliged towards his devotees in a loving way?
It's an interesting sort of question, the way it's worded. Obligations become binding in a forceful manner if no loving attachment is there. It means if you don't serve me out of love, I'll beat the daylights out of you and then you'll serve. Yes, so that's how it is in the material world. Either you serve me out of love, or in another context, in the Vietnam era, you joined the army out of patriotism, where we draft you, or throw you in jail if you refuse. So it may be for love of your country, or else it's just because your country is going to make you do it. So such are relationships in the material world. So can we say that Lord Krishna, although unattached, feels obliged toward the devotees in a loving way? Yes, we can say that. And in fact, he says, I'm so obliged I can't even repay you. You'll just have to be satisfied with the service. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. Do you have a kirtan band ready?
Oh, we have a band. Who's leading this invitation? Okay.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare
Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Jai Govinda. Jai Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivajikacharya Stottra Shatra Shishima Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivajikacharya Stottra Shatra Shishima Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Prem Se Guru Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shyamkund Radhakund Giri Govardhana Ki Vrindavan Dham Ki Mayapur Navadvip Dham Ki Ganga Maya ki, Jamuna Maya ki, Bhakti Devi ki, Tulsi Maharani ki, Giriraj Maharaj ki, Samaveda Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki. All glories to Sama devotees, all glories to Sama devotees, all glories to Sama devotees, all glories to the greatest of the devotees. Nitai Gaur Premanandi.
Hari Hari Bol. Thank you so much, Radesha Prabhu and company, and thank you, Maharaj, for being with us.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you to all.
Thank you, everyone, for being here and for all your comments, questions, and for hearing and just for being here. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami Maharaj ki jai.
Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki Jai. Gaur Premanande.
Hari Hari Bol. Giri Govardhan ki jai.
Jai.